All right, guys, welcome back to the garage. So I know it's been a minute since I posted, just been busy with life and stuff, and also making poor financial decisions. So I had a Forester, I sold that. Now I picked up a 2015 Dodge Dart. Now, these cars did not do well. They only ran for one generation, from 13 to 16. But what can I say? I'm a Mopar guy. I need something cheap, good on gas, a little bit more fun to drive than the Subaru. And this pretty much checked all the boxes. So like I said, this is a 2015. I didn't want a 13 or 14 since those are the first model years. I thought something later in the model years would be better. Hopefully they got the bugs worked out. But this is an SXT with the rally package and blacktop package. It also has the factory lip kit. Now the front one I took off because it was destroyed and I got a new one coming. But I did a ton of research on these before I bought it, and the number one problem they all seem to have is engine mounts. So before I started my search for one of these, I did some research, and it seems like the number one problem everybody complains about across all the models and all the engine and drivetrain configurations is the engine mounts. So like I said, I got the 2.4. Now, regardless of what engine you get, the upper main engine mount and the upper main transmission mount are both hydraulic mounts. And what happens is that hydraulic fluid leaks out, and then the mount sags and it rests on the frame on each side, and then you get vibrations. Which is exactly what's going on with this one. At idle, there's a bad vibration. Once you get moving, the vibration goes away. And sometimes you can hear some clunking going on as the engine rocks, like when you go to drive or to reverse, or vice versa. So we're going to throw some engine mounts in this. Now, it's not exactly the easiest task. The engine mount is buried under the airbox and coolant reservoir, and the transmission mount is buried under the battery. So all that stuff has to come off in order to replace those mounts. There is a third mount under the car in the back. It's more like a torque mount. It's just your standard typical rubber mount. I did not order one in hopes that that one's fine, and it's just my upper two mounts that are giving me problems. All right, we want to start with the airbox. You got two 8mm bolts here, and then the hose clamp, and you should be able to pull the lid off and then get this hose out of the way. Ooh, K&N, that's like 15 horsepower, right? All right, for the intake pipe, you got a 10mm right here. I'm guessing that's intake air temp sensor, and then the hose clamp. And next up, we're going to remove this coolant tank. We're not going to disconnect it, we'll just swing it out of the way. But there's two 10s here. Okay, I did end up pulling the lower airbox out just to give more room for this coolant reservoir to get out of the way. Now you see we have our access to our engine mount. It's just a series of 13s. You got one going to the strut tower, two down to the body frame area, then you have three across on the engine. Now, you want to make sure you support this side of the engine before we remove this. So I'm going to slide a jack under there, probably with a piece of wood between that and the oil pan, just to hold the engine in place. All right, you can see I got the engine supported by the oil pan, and I got a piece of wood between the jack and the oil pan, just protect it. So now we're good to pull the mount. All right, here's the old mount. You can see how cracked it is, and it's completely separated in there. Yeah, no good. So here's the new mount, nice and solid. no cracks. Let's throw it in. All right, that mount's in. Now we're not gonna put everything back together because after we do the transmission mount, we'll loosen both mounts again and kind of let the engine settle and then retighten everything. Now, there is a procedure for this that tells you how to neutralize the engine in the engine bay. Basically, you just go through and loosen all the mount bolts, including the lower torque mount bolts, and then kind of let the engine settle and go through and retighten everything. So we're gonna leave everything undone, replace this mount. We'll loosen the engine mount and the transmission mount, kind of rock the engine, let it settle, and then go through and tighten everything. Okay, first thing we're gonna do is remove the battery. That was a little odd. The battery did not have any kind of tie down, so add that to the list. But now that we got the battery out of here, we're going to move this fuse box. There's 10 millimeters here, here, and here. Move this out of the way. And I think we have to lift up the battery tray because there's one bolt right there. Okay, now in order to get this out of the way, we actually have to remove the guts out of this case. So the first thing we're going to do is disconnect these 4 terminals off of this, move this out of the way. That'll allow us to lift this section out and get rid of the actual housing. All right, so the ones we're worried about are these 3 terminals. Obviously these 2 big ones going onto the main stud, and then these 2 could only fit one way. They're notched, so you can't mix them up. 2 8 millimeters and a 10. Now these 2, the nuts stay on the terminals. Okay, as far as this goes, there's just tabs on either side. It pops out. There you can see that connector right there. Unplug it, use your trim tool. Finally pull that out. Now, once you get to this position, you have to make a choice. There's one bolt that you can't get to underneath the battery tray. Option A, remove this bolt, and then there's a bolt down here that you have to go through the wheel well liner. It goes through the washer tank into the body. Or, I've seen some guys cut this in half. I'm not gonna go that route. What I'm gonna do is just notch the battery tray right here. just so I have a clear path to that bolt. Obviously, do this at your own risk. This is not the correct way, but I'd be surprised if this is the stock mount, never been replaced. And for the future, to make it easier to get to, I'm just going to notch the battery tray. All right, got that notched out. Should have enough room to get a socket on there, and hopefully with all the bolts, we can swing that out from underneath the battery tray. And all I did is take a cutoff wheel and just notched it, and I just shaved some of this off, but way easier. It's not going to hurt anything. The battery will still be secured in here, no problem. So let's take the mount out. Okay, 13 again for the strut tower to mount bolt. Rest are 18s. We do have a bracket with a 10mm we have to remove first. Now, once again, before you start removing bolts, make sure the transmission is supported on this side. All right, it worked. A couple things, I did lower the transmission side just a little bit. I also undid the ABS module plug because one of the ears was under that harness, but it wiggled out of there. The hardest part was it's stuck under this harness, and you can see torn. This one's junk, just like the other one. Same thing, dry rotted and everything. So this should obviously make a big difference having both mounts new. And that mounts in. All right, so before we go putting anything back together, what I'm gonna do is just loosen every bolt on both mounts just a little bit. We'll rock the engine, try to get it to settle in place, make sure the mounts don't look crooked or tweaked or anything like that. And then we'll go through and tighten all the bolts. All right, both mounts are loose, so just kind of gonna rock the engine a little bit. Okay, I think it's pretty good. Now, the instructions say tighten the bracket to frame bolts first, bracket to engine bolts, and then the bracket to strut tower last. Okay, now we'll go do the driver's side. Same thing, we'll do bracket to frame, mount to transmission, and then bracket to strut tower. Okay, we're going to call it good there. Now, like I said, technically, to do that the correct way, you'd want to loosen the lower torque mount also and do the centering. But we're going to try this. If I get no vibrations and stuff, then I think we're good. Obviously, if there's still a vibration or something feels weird, I'll have to redo it, loosening that lower mount also. So, time to start putting stuff back together. plug in my ABS module back in. Push this harness clip back in the harness. Put a fuse box back in here. Carefully put this back in. Don't forget this main connector here. And we're going to slide these two back through there. Snap that back in. Okay, we got our leads going back to the positive side of the battery. And put those back on. I'm going to go ahead and secure the fuse box back in. Okay, let's put this back together. Black was on bottom, not that it matters. Red was on top. And then, like I said, these only fit one way. Okay, battery can go back in. And I need to find a tie down for this. All right, and that's a wrap. I'm going to wait to put the intake hose on because I want to clean the throttle body. It's pretty nasty. And then I'm also going to change the plugs, but other than that, we're wrapped up. Okay, now the big question is, how long are these going to last? I will say, from what I've read, if you replace one, replace the other one. You don't want one bad mount and then put a new one in. That can make the new one prematurely wear, and then you're back in there again. So best chance of these living is replacing both these uppers at the same time. So we'll see what happens. Hopefully I can just daily this thing and have no problems. But thanks for watching. We'll be right back to charger content next, and I'll see you on the next one.